Well, I am extremely blessed to be here. Already, we've been talking for just a few minutes, and I am so excited to continue to have a conversation with Sandy Cooper. Thank you, Sandy, for being on the Journey of Ruth podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, Courtney, for having me. As I told you, I'm very excited to be on your podcast. So thank you. Thank you for letting me talk to your audience.
Well, I am honored. So Sandy's a wife, a mom. She's a blogger. On her website, the Scoop on Balance. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The Scoop on Balance. And then she is the host of the Balanced Momcast, which I love that name. Not a podcast, but the Momcast.
Which is the Momcast.
Yes.
That's right. It's fun.
I love it. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, as you stated, my name is Sandy. I have been married to John for 28 years, and together we have 4 children. Our oldest son, Noah, he passed away when he was almost 9 months old. I tell that story in the introduction of our book. And I have Rebecca, who is 23. I have Elijah, who is 20, and Eliana, who is 15. Elijah and Eliana came to our family through adoption, and Elijah was a domestic adoption, and I was in the room when he was born, met the birth parents. And Eliana is came to us through international adoption. She's from Guatemala, and we got her in our arms at the age of 13 months. So I live in Jacksonville, Florida with my family. My daughter is still in Indiana, not far from where we just moved from in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm a writer, as you said. I'm a Bible study. I love teaching and writing Bible studies. I'm a podcast host at the Balanced Momcast, where I help frazzled moms find peace.
And don't we all need it?
Yes.
Because all of us are frazzled in some way.
That frazzled mom. That's right. That's right.
That's right. Did you always know that adoption was going to be a part of your story, or was that a surprise?
Yeah. That's a good question. We have always loved adoption. My husband and I both come from large families. And so I'm one of 7, and I'm the youngest. And my husband is also one of 7, but he has 6 boys in his family. And then his mom and dad adopted a girl because they didn't want to risk having another boy. And so we've always known that we love it. And, I think it was one of those things yeah, wouldn't it be cool to adopt? But then, after we had Noah and he passed away unexpectedly, we didn't know why. I got pregnant with Rebecca about 2 weeks after Noah died. And so the autopsy had not yet come back. And I was already pregnant with her when it was revealed that we had passed on to Noah. John and I are both carriers of a recessive gene mutation, and he had a genetic disorder called LCHAD. And Rebecca had, all of our children would have had a 25% chance of having the same thing, a 50% chance of being an unaffected carrier, and a 25% chance of being unaffected completely. And Rebecca, thankfully, we could have had genetic testing in utero, but we opted not to do that. We waited till she was born. She went through the genetic testing. And so she's completely clear. She's not even a carrier, which is just, thank you, Jesus. And then we just decided, you know what, let's not roll those dice again. And let's build our family this way. So
yeah. Now you have this message that you talked about how you help mom, that are frazzled. And I'm actually going to read a portion of your bio that you wrote on your website, because I was like, yep, that's me. So you wrote, through most of my 20s and 30s, I was harried and overly busy, disorganized, and unfocused. There you go. You could be writing about me. Juggling my career, my home, my marriage, my ministries, and eventually my babies. Left me feeling drained and inadequate. I desperately wanted balance, but balance felt impossible. I remember looking at other women at work, at Target, in their cars passing by me, and I assumed they all knew something I didn't. I was convinced I was the only one who couldn't figure it out. I thought everyone had everything together but me.
Yes.
And every mom is raising their hand going, how does she know that about me? Because I think we all get to this point where we're like, for me, I feel like once I get one part of my life in control. I'm like, look,
Mhm.
my house is clean for the
Mhm.
first time in like forever. And then I look and there's no groceries, you know, or
So
all of a sudden I'm totally behind on my timeline at
oh
work.
my
And
gosh, yes.
it's like I can't get every aspect of my life organized. So
Yeah.
what it like in your time and helping other moms and in your own discovery, what have you discovered about balance and what does it really mean to quote unquote find balance in our lives?
Yeah, that is such a good question, and I'm glad you're asking it because really in what ended up being like a 20-year uh journey. I hate using that word journey, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
In that 20 years of trying to figure it out, I really tried a lot of things that didn't work. So I have learned
Mm.
what balance is not, first of all. For example, balance is not doing everything. Balance is not doing everything at the same time. Balance is not doing everything my friends are doing. Balance is not doing everything that my friends think I should be doing, or that my mom thinks I
Ooh.
should be doing, or that my sisters think I should be doing. Balance is not doing everything that I think everyone on social media is doing. Balance is not doing everything well. Like I'm allowed to stink
Mm.
at something. Balance is not doing everything by myself. Like I used to think
Mm.
if I hired out or if I asked for help, that that was like an indictment on my character. It's not.
Yeah.
Balance is not doing a little bit of every single thing every single day. Like I used to view balance like these scales that if I took one thing off, one side, it would like fall off the other side. And I'd always be doing like, okay, I just have
Mm.
to do everything a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, it's none of those things. It's also, not doing everything right now in the season, which when
Mm.
you're in the middle of a hectic season, and especially in motherhood, you don't really have the beauty of perspective yet. And
Yeah.
so it's hard to know, like, am I really going to get a chance to do this other stuff if I totally focus on the kids right now? Like, will I, like, truly?
Mhm.
And so, it was a lot of that. It was also me trying to make balance mean that I never felt stressed and I never had conflict. So as long as
Mm.
I was like stress free, that meant balance. Well, that's not life. Like, I
Yeah.
can't guarantee that things are not going to be stressful or that I'm not going to have conflict with someone. So that's all the things that balance is not. What I have learned that balance is that peace that you have when you know your priorities. So you know what you should be doing. You know what you should be doing.
Mhm.
And you're living the life that reflects that right now, and you're doing it with a freedom and a joy that comes from being rooted in Christ. So you
Mm.
know what your gifts and talents are, and you're operating in those, and you understand that the work you're doing, whatever that is, has eternal value, and you're doing it for the Lord, and you're doing it with joy, with the right attitude, not begrudgingly, not because like, oh, I have to do this, yeah, I have to stay home, I have to go to work, or whatever it is. But you're doing it with the joy and with all of with all of the equipment that the Lord has given you to do that right now. Whatever
Mhm.
that means, that's balance. So it is peace. And
Yeah.
I spend my whole first book unpacking that. And because it's a hefty definition and there's a lot of components to it. And I it is really my heart to help women discover what those priorities are for them right now. I think there's some things that Jesus told us are our priorities regardless of who you are, and if you
Mhm.
get those right, everything falls into place. But what that looks like in your life can be and should be very individual and
Yeah.
unique. And I really love helping women discover how to get their life to look like what they know they should be doing right now, and helping them determine what the barriers are to that and help them overcome
Mm.
those barriers. So there's a lot
Yeah.
there, but it's not just, when people say things, I hear a lot of like popular women speakers, Christian speakers, balance is a myth, balance is a unicorn, balance doesn't exist. And I'm like, no, actually, you should know what you should be doing.
Mm,
And your life really should be aligning with that.
mm,
And if it's not, then you're not going to ever have that peace that you're on the right track, because rather than scales, it really looks a lot more like a pendulum most of the time.
mhm.
You're usually going all in on something and letting something else completely drop, and
Yeah.
that is okay. And that can still be very, very balanced.
Mm.
So, yeah.
I love the idea of freedom being something
Mhm.
that we can achieve, first of all.
Yeah.
But second of all, the idea of freedom is when we kind of let go of those ideas of what our life should be
Mhm.
and instead leaning into like what God created us to be. Not what the
Right.
world says it should be, but instead looking at what God says it should be, where our
Yes.
priorities should be, who we were created to be. Even though they're general things that say things that we should be and who we should be as a mom and as a godly wife,
Sure.
each one of us was still created differently.
Right.
And so there is no should be. You should be a stay-at-home mom. You
Right.
should be a mom who goes to work.
Right.
Your kids should be at home with you. Your kids should go to daycare. There are
Right.
no
There's
like
none of that.
yeah,
No.
your house should look like a house on HGTV. No, it shouldn't.
No,
Uh
it
and
shouldn't.
if it does,
But
well
if
done
it
you.
does, right,
Congratulations.
exactly. And you know what? If that's your thing and you get joy out of that,
Yeah.
and that's how you feel like that is something that brings like balance to your life, then yes, then it actually should do. You should not feel shame about having a really beautiful home
But
either.
what you're
You know what I
saying
mean?
is
Yeah.
if I need to hire a designer to make my house look like that, it's okay. Oh,
100%.
good,
A
because that's
hundred
me.
percent. Yes. Yes.
Oh
Well,
my gosh.
yeah. Yeah. All
And
of
I
that
think we
is
could I mean, okay, so we could probably talk about balance for the next the whole episode. Instead, we're just going to use that as a teaser for any of you ladies, and I want you to go to the scooponbalance.com, right? The
yep, that's
scooponbalance.com.
correct.
I want you to go there because there are resources, there are blog
Mhm.
posts that Sandy has written there, and I want you to go and do a deep dive. If you're like, balance is where I need a little bit of help, I want you to go and do
Yep.
a deep dive on Sandy's website. That'll be on the show notes.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
look there. And is there a way to contact you, Sandy, if we have questions about what's on there?
Yes, the best place to contact me is just through email at thescooponbalance@gmail.com. That is
There you
the
go.
very best way.
And usually we throw that at the end, but there you go. It's right up front.
Yep. There I
But don't
am.
go away. We have got a
Yes.
ton to talk about because Sandy has a brand new book that's coming out. I love the title. The title is Mom, You're Amazing. And who
Yep.
doesn't need to hear that as a mom? Like, you're doing a great job, but
Yes.
mom, you're amazing. And the other things I want to tell you, uh, I knew we all need to hear that. I've read a part of your book, and it is. I feel like I was just sitting down across from coffee, and I said, "Sandy, tell me a
Mm.
little bit about your life and your experience as a mom." And you told me your stories, and you are such a great storyteller. Like, I'm just sitting there, like, reading. Oh my gosh, what's
Mm.
next? Wait, what's going to happen next? And oh my gosh, yes, I've been there before. And great, you're a great storyteller. And
Oh,
so
thank
it's
you.
definitely a book of your life. Why was this book, Mom, You're Amazing? Why is this the time and the right time for you to write this book?
Yes. So thank you, first of all, for all of the very generous things you just said. So that was very
Well, they're all
unexpected
true.
and sweet. Yay. Thank you. Yeah. The funny thing is, when you said the title of my book, do you know that yesterday I Googled Mom, You're Amazing, because I was trying to get to the link of my own book,
Uh-huh.
and another book came out 2 weeks ago by the exact same title. And
I
I'm like, are you kidding me right now? So anyways, if
I
your
and you know what?
listeners
I have
go,
heard that. I have heard
Mhm,
that sometimes you will see these books
mhm.
come out, either same title or like
Yes, or the
same
exact same
ideas.
theme.
Yes.
Yes, and they're like simultaneously happening
Yes.
in the
And
world.
someone
Yes,
someone said, okay, here's the thing. You can see it in two different ways. This was coming from like another author who
sure.
had the exact same thing happen. She
Yeah,
wrote a book, they published it, and then in the same week there were like three other books coming out on the same topic. And
right.
she's like, and she by like really well-known authors.
Yeah.
And she said, I have two choices. I can be like really frustrated and be like,
Mhm.
how did this happen? And now I'm in competition with this. Or
Right.
I can see that there is obviously something going on in our culture and God is saying,
Yes.
"Wake up, I need you to see this." And I'm not and it
Yes.
won't be just good enough for one person to say it. I need a
Yes.
bunch of different voices to say it so that my people will hear it. So moms,
That's
this
so
is our chance
good.
to say, "Mom, you're doing amazing."
You're
And
yes, you're
God's using
doing
you
better
to
than you
tell us that.
think.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yes, so the how this book came to be is back in 2008, when my kids were 1, 6, and 9 years old. So I we had
Mhm.
just adopted Eliana. She was attached to me. She was this 25-pound 13-month-old who didn't know
Ah.
how to walk yet. And toddler adoption is a whole thing, and you have to attach them to you. So
Mhm.
she was so chunky and giant and heavy. And so I was like strapping her to me constantly. She had never slept a second in her life without being attached to someone.
Mm.
And she obviously didn't realize I had other kids and also needed to sleep. And I was like, oh dear. And so I had to like pretty much cancel my life because I couldn't figure out how to take care of them. And, also keep up on laundry, shower, and wipe the pee off the toilet seat so that I could keep up with the Bible study I was leading in my house at the time. So, okay. So
Mm.
I'm sitting at my kitchen table. I just think, you know what? Blogs are kind of this new cool technological thing. Maybe I'll open one. I'll try one. I didn't even know what I was doing. So I was just like trying all these names. I come up with God Speaks Today, which is the worst blog name ever. And because like all the good ones were taken. And so I just decide I'm going to continue the Bible study that I'm teaching in my house that I can no longer handle because of, my 25-pound toddler who won't let me put her down. And I'm just going to start publishing it on the internet, and the people who
Mm.
used to come to my Bible study, I'll just let them read it there. Well, then I just realized, I've written my whole life, and I thought, oh, this is just a really good venue to just talk about what's happening in my life. And so
Mhm.
I started writing, some blog posts on the kids and started talking about my struggles as a parent. And then I went into this like major depression and started talking about that. And then I talk about fitness and nutrition because that's like my favorite thing. And so, I just found that as over the years, I just kept writing and writing and writing. Well, in 2012, I rebranded it, got rid of that name, went to the Scoop on Balance, which is a play on my name, Sandy Cooper Scoop. Everybody that I used to work with called me the Scoop and whatever. So
There
also
you
silly
go.
name, but it's fine.
Yeah.
So then I realized that balance was a thing that I cared about. So okay, so fast forward to maybe a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, I'm on my website and I'm just looking. I have like between 7 and 800 essays that I have written since 2008.
Wow.
And I'm just like, yeah, I can see the stats behind the scenes. Most of them have not been accessed by anyone in years. Like I can see which ones get traffic. Like, and so I'm looking at some of these old essays and I'm just like, oh, wow. Like that was like I had forgotten some of the stuff that I had written, and I thought
Mm.
I wrote it in the trenches of parenting these little kids. And I was like, some of it was so raw and some, and like so revealing of what the Lord was doing in my life at the time. And because it was written to other people, it's different than reading your journals. Like it was
Mm.
already in a form that was for somebody else.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my goodness, like I just had forgotten I even had any of this. So I just went through the painstaking process of just separating them out into theme. And some of them are not good. So you'll never see those. They're just they were cringy and terrible. But
But
some of
hey, the
them were
idea had to get out of your head so you can
that's
move on to the
right.
next good one, right?
That's
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
right. So I just started separating them and I just choosing like my very favorite ones and showing them to my friends and being like, what do you think about this? Like, what if I just
Mm.
compiled them all into books? And everyone was like, yes, do that. And so that's what I did. So last year I just the very first one that is rising to the surface first because I mostly talk and minister to moms is the one that the theme is motherhood. And so they're basically essays that I had written between the years of 2008 and 2019, which was right after my oldest daughter moved out. So it
Mhm.
really covers from, I tell, from the birth of my first son all the way to when Rebecca moved out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And I
that's how it
love that
came.
you kind of like group it into
Hmm.
like the stages that you're talking about. So you've got
Right.
like your young kids
Yep.
stages, and then you've got kind of those middle years, and
Hmm.
then your older high school kids.
Yep.
And I think that's helpful because it's not like a mixed up kind of group of stories where like, oh, now they're this age. Oh, now they're this age. But
Yes.
it's like, okay, I can get myself in a mindset. I'm reading, stories from a mom who has young kids, which of course I can totally identify with.
Yes. Yes.
But then also continue on and reading and be encouraged by,
Hmm.
the stories that you're telling about your kids in middle school and in
Hmm.
high school. How did your expectations about like the kind of mom you would be and eh, and then the kind of mom that you are,
Yeah.
right? Which I'm sure when you write all of this down, I'm sure you read back through things and you're seeing some of your victories and you're seeing some of your failures going, I never
Hmm.
wanted to be that mom,
Right.
but I apparently was, and it was on
Apparently
this
I
day,
was.
right? Maybe you didn't even realize you were that mom until you went back and reread it. So, did
Right.
you have like these idealized versions of the mom you would be, and then these versions of like what reality was?
Yes. Well, of course. And I think we all do. But
Because if
I'll
you
tell you,
don't, you're lying to yourself, right?
exactly, right, or you just, like, are the one in a million person who nailed it, like,
Mm-hmm.
who actually, like, whose expectations meet reality. It's such a
Yeah.
rare thing, especially when it
Right.
comes to parenting. So, yes, and I would say here was the biggest contrast for me. So, I grew up, as I said before, I'm the youngest of 7, and my parents, loving home, um, crazy, small house, tons of people, just, all that. But my parents, and they, before my mom died, she died when I was pregnant with Rebecca, but they had been
Mm.
married 51 years when she died. And
Wow.
so again, like, just a really wonderful legacy. So I don't want to dishonor my parents in any way when I share this, but neither of them were good at anger management. So
Mm.
my dad was an exploder and my mom was a stuffer. And so I didn't really realize that either of those things were wrong or bad until I got married. So I was like well into my mid 20s. I got married when I was 25.
Mm.
And I get married to John, who is neither of those things. Okay. He's just another whole breed of, I don't even know how to describe him. He's adorable. We've been together forever. Like, I've been together with him longer than I haven't. So, we've crossed that milestone and we're going to
Right.
be together forever. So, but I realized that I had really combined the worst parts of my parents' temperament into one really poorly mismanaged, uh, volatile temperament. Okay, so I just didn't
Mm.
even realize I had that. So I have Noah, and you know how it is when you have that first baby, and you just look at that baby and you're just like, I will never do anything to hurt you. Like, the
Mm.
love that a mom has, like that first moment looking at that child. Well, and we had on top of it, just Noah's birth was so traumatic. And so when I
Mhm.
finally did get to bring him home, it was such a miraculous situation that I can remember honestly looking at him and saying, "You will never see my anger. You will never see it because I love you too much to ever show you this side of me. I will
Mm.
not be like that to you." And because Noah only lived, just shy of 9 months, well, I was able to succeed in that because
Yeah.
it was, I wasn't going to get mad at him. Like, he was
Right.
so tiny. Like, I didn't ever get mad at him. And so I thought that was the mom, like, okay, I'm going to be chill mom. And I know some moms do better in the infant stage. Some moms, like, that's not their jam at all and they do better, when in teen years. I am an infant mom. Like,
Okay.
love the infant stage so, so, so much. It came easy to me, very natural
Mhm.
to me. The teen years, not so much. So I just assumed my expectations of myself was that I am going to be the mom who never freaks out, who is so chill and so fun and so calm and warm and gentle and encouraging. Like, I'm just going to be all those things to my kids.
Mm.
And then I had Rebecca. And, you know, I've had people ask me like, how do I know if I have a strong-willed child? And my response is what people used to say to me, if you have to wonder, you do not have one, because you know when you have a strong-willed child. So
Mhm.
Rebecca, they handed her to me, and I kid you not, they laid her on my chest, and she took her little hands and pushed up and looked me in the eye, and I felt like she was like, "Who are you? And
The one
what
who
is."
just gave birth to you, but thanks.
Yeah, exactly. So, she was a whole other thing. And
Mm.
so she was a great baby in terms of like feeding and napping, and she was a good sleeper, and when she was happy, she was super happy, but when she wasn't happy, um her like she would get to crying, and not even in a colicky way. This was like, now we're into like age 1, maybe 18 months ish. And she just starts throwing these tantrums.
Mm.
And I had read, and I had parenting books, stacks and stacks. And, I have to know, I have to understand everything. I want to research it all. I ask all the parents, all the advice. And so, everyone would be like, it's normal, it's normal. And I would, you're looking at your kid, and I'm thinking, this doesn't feel normal. Like her
Mm.
tantrums were extreme and lengthy and scary. And I realized at that moment, not at that moment, over the course of time, because it didn't happen in a moment. But, that type of thing is very, um, if you already have an issue with managing your emotions like I did underneath the
Mm.
surface, that is the thing that is going to trigger it, is when your
Mm.
kid just continues to freak out no matter what you do, if you're doing it right, if you're doing it wrong. It it just and so as the years were going on, I realized that I really had an issue with anger.
Mm.
And I would start matching her tantrum for tantrum. I mean, if
Mm.
she would start screaming, I would just scream at the top of my lungs, like louder. I was ridiculous. If she would start whatever, throwing herself down, I would like go and start slamming doors and throwing things. Now, thank God I never, ever hurt her. Um, but I scarily, like for the first time, understood how parents get there. I
Mm.
understood it. And
Yeah.
that wasn't even on my I had never been abused. I don't come from a family of abuse. I had never seen abuse. I didn't know anyone who was abused. And so it wasn't even on my radar. And here I am with this beautiful little girl. And I thought, oh my gosh, like I might hurt her
Mm.
if I don't learn how to get this under control. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Those strong-willed children. I am one.
I am
And
too. Nice to
and
meet you.
yeah, right? My aunt tells a story of how my mom used to talk about the fits I would throw. These
Mhm.
long, lengthy, loud, like, crying fits. And, my aunt said no one ever saw them. Everyone was like, "No, not Courtney. She's such
Right. She's
an
so sweet.
angel. She's so
Mhm.
sweet." And she goes, "And then I saw one." And she's like, "Courtney, you looked possessed."
Yes.
And I was like,
100%.
"Oh,
Yeah.
thanks. Thank
Well,
you so much."
yeah. I mean, and I won't lie. I mean, we actually had Rebecca prayed for that very thing. I'm like, okay, I think there's something in this child, because like this is not normal. But yeah, I mean, we laugh, like we can laugh about it now too. But yeah, it didn't stop. Like she's now at the age of 23 just learning how to get this under control. And of
Mm,
course, we learned later that we had to have like a whole I mean, we took her to get help, you know what I
yeah.
mean? Later. Um, and one of the doctors gave us a really, I've never shared this with anyone, but I feel like we've known each other for so long. But, one of the doctors that examined her actually gave me a really great explanation for what was happening. And because I got pregnant with her 2 weeks after Noah died,
Mhm.
and my mom died while I was pregnant with her also. So I lost my son and my mother in a 5-month period while I was pregnant. Well, I was got pregnant right at so her
Gosh.
brain was forming while I am like, I've never had grief like that before in my
Mm.
life, and I pray to
Yeah.
God I never have it again. But I can just remember just praying and asking God to protect her her forming parts because I knew
Mm.
that what I would, babies who are developing and when it's like they're having trauma
Yeah.
and because she was reacting as if she had been like traumatized either in utero or like I had gone through tremendous trauma while she was in utero or that she had been abused and for a while we almost wondered whether or not something had happened to her that we didn't know about
Mhm.
and like was she in someone else's care and someone hurt her and we didn't know so like there were a lot of possibilities that we beyond just being a strong-willed child we realized that there was something deeper happening
Yeah.
and so that was so triggering to me because I couldn't keep I just came into this mothering thing with what I learned was not the best temperament for that.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
wasn't prepared and I just wasn't the mom I thought that I was going to be to her.
But what I don't hear you saying is that you weren't meant to be a mom. And
No.
I think
Yeah.
sometimes that's a lie that can be like someone can take on is like, because I was this way, I should never have been a mom.
Right.
But what you're saying is that I realized I had some things I had to work through. I
Mhm.
remember this just recently happened. Um, I remember when we were in the hospital with my first,
Mm.
and we had to watch like it felt like 75 hours of videos before they would release us.
Yeah.
And I wasn't 75, but it was like, for heaven's sakes, we just want to go home.
Yes.
And he was actually in the NICU as well. So we had plenty of time to watch them, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
so uh, we watched these, and one of them was if you get too worked up or too angry at your
Mhm.
baby because they won't stop crying, it is okay to place your baby in a safe place
Yes.
and walk
And
away.
walk away.
Calm
Yeah.
yourself down. Like, it is not going to traumatize your child that you're
Right.
leaving them in a crib and they're crying for a few minutes while you calm yourself down so you can better care for your baby.
100%.
And we said that a couple times to each other when we were reaching those moments where the child, one of our children was,
Mhm.
just crying uncontrollably. And I'm like, I can't. And
Mhm.
one of them would be like, walk away. Like,
Mhm.
he's fine. Like,
Mhm.
just go and take a second,
Yep.
or I'll take him or whatever. Our children are now 4 and 7. And
Mm.
the other day, one of them was being just real trying. And
Mhm.
I called my husband and I said, I don't know what to do. I'm
Mhm.
out of ideas. I am
Mhm.
beyond frustrated. Like, it's like
Mhm.
one thing after another. And he goes, walk away.
Walk
He
away.
goes,
Yes.
put him in his room where you
Mhm.
know he's safe
Yeah.
and go outside and walk away. Because
Yeah.
he's like, remember, that's what we had to do when they were babies. I'm like, you're
Yes.
so right. Like, why did I
Yes,
ever
you're
think that
genius.
stopped?
That's right.
But sometimes I think
Yes.
it's because, for whichever parent it is that stays home, whether it's the mom or the dad, that's like continuously with the child.
Yeah.
Like, it's so helpful to have that perspective from the person who's outside of the situation, even if it's just like a
Yes.
day, like it's a Saturday and I'm a working mom, but that day I'm home and my husband is not, to call and
Yes.
say, this is what's going on. Well, then do this.
Yes.
Why didn't I think of that? So,
Right.
for those of us that like maybe are not the chill moms, right?
Mhm.
And we need to step away
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
And like, what are your how can we learn to control our reactions to
Yeah.
our kids' tantrums or our kids I don't know, sometimes I feel like it's disrespect, but then I realize it's just like age appropriate
Yeah.
mistakes or whatever, but it's still frustrating to me. What
Yeah.
can we do and how can we learn to react better?
Yes. Well, let me first preface by saying that um, I am not a parenting expert, so I am very careful never to advise moms how to raise their kids.
Mm.
But what I am an expert at is learning how to calm the freak down. So now I'm not
Yep.
certified in that, but I'm pretty sure that if there was a certification in it, I would earn that.
I have a
So
PhD in calm
I
the
have
freak down.
and
Yeah.
calm the freak down. Yes, that's what I'm professionally certified, calm the freak downer.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
yes. So I will say that, you know, I know a lot of moms who want to, they don't see the damage in like, well, why can't I just yell back? And
Mm.
I want to first explain why you shouldn't, okay?
Mm.
Because there are some major things happening, and I'm talking mostly, well, I think with little kids as well, but where this particular chapter in the book falls, it is squarely in the adolescent slash teen years, because for me, we were still dealing with it, and it is where I really started seeing how scary it was, and what the
Mm.
long lasting effects of my child's anger and tantrums coupled with my anger and tantrums, like what was going to happen. So let me
Mm.
first encourage moms. Here's what's going to happen if you don't learn to calm the freak down. Um, you're going to lose your leverage with your child. Okay. So
Mm.
suddenly it does not matter what the child did to provoke your anger or your reaction. It doesn't matter if the child needs discipline. It doesn't matter if they need correction or guidance or whatever, because now you are freaking out and the spotlight is on you, and your kid likes nothing better than to get the spotlight off of them onto you. So you have now lost any leverage you had to correct the issue if any issue needs to be correcting. The
Mm.
second thing is that your child is going to get to the place where they feel like you are not safe. So if you freak out when they freak out, they're not going to come to you when you really have a reason to legitimately freak out. So think ahead to the teen years. Think, my child tries drugs. My child is having sex. My child is drinking. My child cheated. My child skipped school,
Mhm.
and they need to tell someone. They need to confess this. Like, we need to talk about it. If you were freaking out when they were 5 or when they were 10, um, and you were throwing matching them tantrum for tantrum at those ages, where are they going to go? Where are they going to
Mm.
go when they do need to talk about those big things? Because I'm not saying every kid is going to do drugs or have sex or anything like that, but the kids need someone to go to. You want it to be you.
There will be
And
something big in their life.
there will be something big, and
Yeah.
it will be something that will shock you.
Yeah.
Like, it just will.
Yeah.
And the I think one of the biggest things is it is impossible for us as moms to think rationally when we are out of control. So as soon as you tip into uncontrol, out of control, you're going to start threatening things you don't mean, that you have zero intention of following through on. You're
Yeah.
going to call them things you didn't intend to call them. Those words will absorb into who they are.
Mm.
You will look like a fool,
Mm.
and you will do more damage if you don't learn to calm down than if you just like go with your volatile temperament and just be like, what, my mom yelled at me and I turned out okay. Like, no, actually, no, that's not okay.
Mm.
So with that as a backdrop, I will also say that I came up with 6 strategies for
Yeah.
staying calm.
We like strategies. We
I
do.
love a good strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like lists. I'm a list person, so give it to me in a list and I'm all ears. So I like to deliver my things in lists.
Mhm.
Um, and so I will also say, and I want to just say this for everyone listening, this took me years of intentional, focused work. Okay.
Mm.
So I'm coming from not being able to control myself at all to now it is probably one of the biggest areas of personal growth that I have ever achieved. I don't even
Mm.
feel like I'm the same person in this area. And so I want to encourage those moms who are like, yeah, she doesn't get me because she's just so chill. No, actually, Actually, to au contraire, I have worked so hard, many years and many years of prayer and study in the word, and also under the hand of a very trusted therapist.
Mm,
So I would encourage moms that if they truly like, go get help. Like, you
mhm,
don't have to do this by yourself, and you might not be able to just get quick tips off of a podcast.
mhm,
But I know
mhm,
enough about your audience to know that if they're listening still, they are amazing moms. They're
mhm.
invested. They believe in Jesus. They are invested in their families. They're invested in making sure that they are showing up as who God is calling them to be as a mom. Like, I
Yeah,
trust that, and so I just would encourage them and give them all the permission in the world. Like, please go get help if you feel like you need to walk this with somebody and not just
absolutely.
do it.
Absolutely. And I
Yep.
want to say before we get to the strategies that this goes right back to what we talked about at the beginning with the balance and the
Hmm.
fact that sometimes we feel out of balance because when we compare ourselves to somebody else, we're
Hmm.
like, how are they so in control? How are they so put together and I'm not? And what you're
Hmm.
saying is that anyone who's looking at me
Hmm.
and the way that I parent doesn't see the work I
Oh,
put
yes.
in to be the mom that I am when one of my kids comes to me or is having a tantrum or whatever.
Yes.
Like I have done the work to make sure that I respond correctly. And just like
Yes.
anything out in the working world, you don't just automatically get put to the top without doing the
Right.
work to work your way up. And
Right.
unfortunately, parenting, marriage,
Hmm.
friendship, family
Hmm.
relationships, none of it just happens beautifully without work. And so
Right.
we have to put in the work and we have to put in the time to help ourselves be the best friend, the best
Hmm.
mom, the
Yep.
best wife that we can
Yep.
so that God can use us instead of us hindering the work that he's doing. So I
100%.
I love that idea that hey, let's remember that that person that you're seeing, how much work did she have to do to get
Hmm.
there? So what are
Right.
your 6 strategies that so that we can start working on this in our own life?
Yes. Well, the very first one, and I almost didn't include it when I first wrote this chapter because I thought, well, duh, but it's not a duh.
No.
It is pray.
Mhm.
And it sounds trite, and I don't mean it to be trite, but I will tell you that when I was in the throes of scary adolescent and teen rage. It was beyond, when it gets older, it's not a tantrum anymore. It's rage. And they're
Mm.
dangerous because, they'll lash out, they'll hurt themselves. They have keys to a car, they'll drive away, they'll run
Mm.
away. Like, it gets very, very scary. And so I I made it a practice to pray first thing in the morning, pray before I woke
Mm.
her up, pray before I would engage any conversation, pray in the middle of, like, if I would start to see things escalating, I would be praying in my mind, just like, Jesus, help me to stay in control. I would pray afterwards. I would excuse myself and pray. I mean, I would just pray in all circumstances, like,
Yeah.
pray, 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 pray. I don't know how to do any of this without prayer. So that
Yeah.
would be strategy number 1.
Mhm. That makes sense. And I that's how we start even in discipleship. You know, our
Yep.
process in finding a discipler, what's the first step? Pray.
Yep.
Cuz if you don't, now you're starting this process in your own power and not in the power of God. So
Right.
that's really good. Yeah.
Yes.
So we got
Okay.
pray and then
Pray. Number 2 is envision yourself maintaining control. So sometimes when I know that I'm going to have a difficult conversation with my child, I will actually picture myself being completely calm.
hmm.
And I will practice out like scenarios in my mind that, okay, if he says this, I will respond this way. If he says this, I will respond this way. If he starts to do the thing he always does that always triggers my anger, then I will not respond the way I usually do. I will instead do this. And so
Mm.
there is, and I believe that that is like probably something I learned in therapy, because it can translate to so many different scenarios in life, but just picturing myself not losing my crap um,
Yeah. Yeah.
helped me to actually, like, the chances of me staying calm in the moment just exponentially increased.
Yeah. Yeah. That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And I do that sometimes with conversations, and they
Mhm.
never go the way that I pictured they would.
Exactly. Right.
But
Right.
they do get to the point where, like, I'm like, okay, now I can have a couple of coping mechanisms as we walk through this. So we have
Good.
pray, and then
Mhm.
we have picture yourself doing this well,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And number three.
Number 3 is, and you've already talked about it, but walk away. So
Mm,
when things start to escalate, and they will, because you know what? Your child, even if you even if you raise them perfectly, which you won't because you're not perfect, but
hmm.
they're emotionally unstable. Teens, adolescents, especially, they're just very emotionally unstable. Their brains are not fully developed. And so things
Yeah.
start to escalate. And when they do, you need to have an exit strategy to maintain your composure, because just
Mm,
like you can accidentally lose, because little infants, like you said, they're so helpless. And like it's clear that you should walk away in that situation. But
yeah.
you know what? When you have like someone looking you eyeball to eyeball, and they have now articulated a very, um, you know, an argument to what you are saying, and they have strong opinions, and they're not saying it with respect, or they're swearing at you or threatening
Hmm.
something, you're not so much like, "Oh, sweet little baby, I'm gonna walk away so I don't hurt you." You're thinking, "Oh my gosh, you better run." Because, if so
Because I'm about to
what
take
I
away everything in your
yeah,
in
yeah,
your
I'm
life.
about to make your life the most worst, the horriblest life that you
Yeah.
could ever imagine.
Yeah.
Um, so what I learned to do is I would say things like, okay, I can feel myself getting very angry, and I need a minute. I need
Mm,
a minute to walk away. Now, I have one of my children who would absolutely refuse. And they, it's my daughter just needs all the resolution, but she also wants to make sure that I have heard everything that she is saying, even if she's screaming it at me and saying it horribly. And I would stand there and I would listen, and then I would say, "Okay, I hear what you're saying, but I cannot have a conversation with you when you are screaming at me like that, and I need a minute."
mm,
And and if still, like, your child does not let you go, not that you ever need permission from your child to do something, but if you find that you're trapped, you just say, "Okay," and then you just leave. Like, because you
mm,
don't wanna say something that is going to be permanently damaging. You definitely don't want to get physical, with your child. And, for those of us who have struggled with anger and frustration and losing it with our kids, like, we are, like, trying not to hurt them. Like,
yeah.
we're trying, like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh, I really might hit you right now." And I
Hmm.
hate to even say that, because I know this is a podcast and I don't like to put that kind of thing out there, but I know there's some moms who are like, "Oh my gosh, that's me." Like,
Hmm.
so I just want to assure you, it is okay to just go, "Please excuse me," and then get out.
Yeah.
Go into your room, close the door, punch your pillow, call your husband, call your
Hmm.
friend, open your Bible, scream, like, whatever you need to do, but walk away.
Hmm.
Walk away.
So what I hear you saying is that we as parents, we're in control. Like
Mm,
and I think sometimes we can feel like we have to respond in that moment. But what you're
right.
saying is like, if you feel like your body is going to physically respond
Yeah.
or emotionally respond, you're saying you have the power to get yourself out of there,
Yes.
no matter what. And you need to claim that like ability and not feel like, because actually it's possible that staying in that situation is worse than leaving at that moment in
Yes.
time.
100%. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
That
That's
makes a lot of
exactly
sense.
right.
And I think when we come back, even if it's hard to leave and even if we feel like in
Mhm.
that moment it's weak or it's
Mhm.
not a good idea, if when we come back, everyone is a little more calm and you
Yeah.
can have that you can probably have a more productive conversation on the other side of that stepping out.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think you're also teaching your child when you're about to lose control, this is something you can do as well.
Yeah.
Like you have my permission to exit should you need to
There you
before
go.
you lose control.
So we're teaching our kids their own coping mechanisms, which
Exactly,
is
which is
great.
really the goal, is it not?
Yeah.
It's really not just about let me be a chill mom. It's really about I am training these kids to go out into the world and someday they're going to be a spouse to someone. Someday they're going to be a parent to someone. And how do I want them to respond in that? In fact, I'm getting ahead of myself because that's actually one of my strategies. But yes, it's all about training and
Yeah.
teaching them so that they can go and do likewise.
Yeah. So what's the next strategy?
So number 4 is picture your teen as a toddler. So
Mm,
when my daughter was a toddler and she started throwing these temper tantrums, she had the cute little chubby toddler cheeks and the big blue toddler eyeballs. And, if she would throw herself down because I wouldn't give her the cookie, it was so much easier for me to just kind of like step over her and just be like, okay, well, throw your tantrum, but you're still not going to get the cookie because it's not time for that.
yeah.
And it was just easier for me to do that because I knew she was a toddler and toddlers throw tantrums. But when they get to be, like I said, older and they're looking at you now eyeball to eyeball and they're articulating things like an adult, they sometimes even look like an adult. But
Mm,
every once in a while, and I don't know if you do this and you see this with your kids, but sometimes your kids will be talking to you and just the face that they make or the way that they like the a mannerism they use, all of a sudden you see their baby face again and you're like,
mm,
"Oh, your cute little baby face." That would happen sometimes when my
mm,
daughter would start losing her mind.
mm.
And I would look at her face and she'd be crying and I would see her like a toddler. And I just felt like the Lord would remind me, she's still a child.
Yeah.
Like and you can have compassion on her, understanding that she doesn't really have the tools to respond in full self-control right now. And it's just enough to, all of these strategies combined, not one of them is going to get you over the hump, but all of them combined can kind of help you refocus and see it a little bit differently so that you can move through it with more self control. So if you picture
Mhm.
them and realize this is still a child, even when they're
Mhm.
looking at you eyeball to eyeball and they have like armpit hair and breasts, you're like,
Yeah.
okay, wait. And,
You see that
I know
innocence
you
in them.
shaved this morning. Yes, there's like this baby in you
Yeah.
still, and you are not there yet. And the Lord has
Mm.
just given me compassion on you because I see you as a child still.
And then that puts you back in the mom role because you're
Yes.
not looking in like this adult, which I'm sure that comes, later
Yes.
on when
Sure,
if you
of
do have
course.
adult
When
kids
they're an
and
adult,
yeah.
then
Yes.
you deal with them differently, but
Right.
not
But when they're your teen,
nope.
I
They're
am your mom
yeah,
and I'm
I'm
going to
still your
yes.
mom.
That makes
Yes.
sense. So that was
Yes.
number 4. What's number 5?
Yes. Number 5, and I kind of started getting ahead of myself with this one, but it's be the adult you want your kids to be.
Yeah, that's important.
That this one, I will tell you what this has kind of been my parenting mantra with this and with almost everything else. Um, how do I want my kids to respond when they're married
Yeah.
and their spouse is saying something that is triggering to them? Do I want them to explode? Do I want them to scream? More importantly, how do I want my kids to respond to their future children?
Yeah.
And when I think of it that way, and all of a sudden it's not just like, oh my gosh, you're getting me so angry, and it's not me and my feelings, all of a sudden I'm projecting into the future and thinking, I
Mm.
need to be right now what I how I want them to treat my grandkids when
Yeah.
their grandkids are freaking out on them. All of a sudden it's like, now it's not about me at all. It is now a training opportunity. Like,
Yeah, I've heard it
okay,
said that like you're not raising kids, you're raising adults.
100%.
And so that's kind of what you're touching on there is that you want to raise the adults that you want them to be.
Yes. And you
Yeah.
have to demonstrate that to them. You
Yeah.
can't just always point them to it and say, you need to calm down while you yourself are freaking out. Like, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
You have to demonstrate it. And you have to say, you know what? I'm really angry with you right now, but I want you to hear me. I am not raising my voice at you.
Yeah.
And I want you to talk to me the same way.
That's
And
right.
so when you think of it that way, as, instilling them with skills for their future life, it all of a sudden has a whole different, it's all of a sudden something different that you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what is your sixth strategy?
The sixth one is, imagine that someone else is standing in the room with you.
Yeah.
So, we all, unfortunately, it's sad but true, but like, we behave differently in front of strangers, in front of our pastor, in front of our neighbor. If someone came knocking at the door, you wouldn't be standing there screaming at your kid.
Yeah.
And if you do that, then you probably should like go talk to someone, because you
Yeah.
probably shouldn't do that. But so there were so many times where I would be wanting so badly to lose my temper.
Mm.
And I would think, so I was on staff at our church, and before we moved, and I would think, how would I respond to this situation right now if Pastor Tim was standing right here next to me? Would
Yeah.
I totally freak out on her? Would I like get all sarcastic? Because I go straight to the sarcasm and straight to the cutting remarks, and then I start to lose my mind.
Mm.
And if Tim was standing here right now next to me, is that how, or if the mailman, the Prime Amazon Prime guy showed up at the door and rang the doorbell, or
Yeah.
it, if you can conduct yourself the way you would if someone else was standing in the room, sometimes that's just enough to like help you realize like how ridiculous you're being. And like,
Mhm.
okay, this is helpful. Like, if Tim was here, what would I say? I would respond this way. Then do that.
Yeah.
Then do
Yeah,
that.
man, I think these strategies are so important for us as parents. I think maybe we do a couple of them, but then there's a couple where we're like, "Oh, that's really good," to
Yeah.
to even like just set them down, like write them down, and then to journal about them and to think about which ones can I improve in and which ones which ones am I already doing well? Because most likely, like I said, most likely you're doing a couple of these really well. And
Right.
thank you for kind of discipling us in
Mm.
this idea of how can we walk our kids through these hard moments in life,
Yeah.
because we need voices like yours and other voices that have walked through this, done the work, thought through this, and to encourage us and to say like, yeah, absolutely, you can do this, and
Yeah.
don't be scared.
Yeah.
Where can we find your new book or find more information about you?
Yeah. So you can find it. It will be, it's actually releasing a week from today when we are recording. So on April
Okay.
19th, it will be
Uh-huh.
available. You can find out everything about the book at thescooponbalance.com. There is also a quiz there on the website for moms to find out what their mom's superpower is.
I love that.
Because, yeah, so, I want moms to really start to see that their parenting style
Mhm.
is, see it as a strength, that we shouldn't be comparing to other moms. Like, we're not going to be the same. God didn't make us the same. He didn't give us the same families. So this is just a fun way for moms to kind of figure out what it is that they do naturally and how that reflects the heart of Christ. So
I love
yes.
that.
Yep.
Awesome. Once again, yet another way to encourage moms to,
Yeah.
grow and to be that mom that God's created them to be. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank
And
you.
I'm so excited to see how women will be encouraged by your book, Mom, You're Amazing. So thank you for talking with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Absolutely.